Now we are getting into the fascinating topic of encryption for S3. Just so you know, the exam loves to ask questions about S3 encryption, so I require you to pay really a lot of attention here. And I know encryption is not an easy topic, so I really tried my best here to explain to you in simple terms how encryption works in S3 and what are your different options. So there are four methods of encryption for objects in S3. There is SSE S3, and it's to encrypt S3 objects using keys and handled and managed by AWS. SS3 KMS, which is the exact same thing except now AWS will use KMS to encrypt your data. SS3C, which is when you provide your own encryption keys and Amazon S3 will encrypt your data. And client-side encryption, where you encrypt your data client-side. Don't worry, I have diagrams for all of those just so you get a better idea of how they work. But just so you get an idea, there are four methods of encryption for S3. It's super important for you to know again what method is adapted to which example in the exam. So SS3 S3. So for example, this is the one where the encryption keys are handled and managed by Amazon S3. You actually don't even see them. The object will be encrypted server-side, and the encryption type is AES 256. Remember this. To make it work, you must set a header when you send your data to Amazon S3, which is this very long header. Just remember the form, it's XAMZ for Amazon, server-side encryption, AES 256, which makes sense because we're requesting Amazon to perform server-side encryption for us with the algorithm AES 256. Okay, so here's how it looks like in a diagram. We have our object, okay, and we want to put it into our Amazon S3 bucket, but we want to encrypt it with SSE S3. So the first thing I'm going to do is make an HTTP or HTTPS request, and I'm going to add that header XAMZ server-side encryption AES 256. You must set it, okay? What happens is that now Amazon S3 receives our object, it's there, and then because we requested server-side encryption, it's also going to create a managed key and a managed data key. And this is managed by S3. And using these two things, what happens is that there will be some encryption. And after encryption, the data will be put into the Amazon S3 bucket. Make sense? So the one thing to notice here is that the encryption happens server-side, it happens on the Amazon S3 side, and Amazon S3 provides the encryption key. Now, if you use KMS, it's also an encryption server-side, except this time the data key will be managed by KMS. The advantage of using KMS is that you get more control over the rotation of that key, and you can get an audit trail about how that key is used. The object will be encrypted server-side, and you must set a header. The header is exactly the same. It's XAMZ server-side encryption, but the value this time is AWS KMS. So if we look at an example and a diagram again, we get the object, we get AWS S3, and what we do is that we transfer the object using HTTP or HTTPS and the header that we set before. And so the object is in Amazon S3. And so now the key that is used is a KMS customer master key or CMK. So that's the only difference. And now the encryption still happens and the data is put in the bucket. So the difference between SSE S3 and SSE KMS is that this time the key that is used is a KMS customer master key that you can manage over time. If you use SS3C, then it's for server-side encryption using data keys that are fully managed by you, the customer, outside of AWS. Amazon will not store the encryption key you provide, and HTTPS in this case must be used. Encryption key must be provided in the HTTP headers for every HTTP request made. So that's a lot of information. How does that look like? Because I think that makes more sense to explain. We have the object and we have Amazon S3, and we provide and we generate a client-side data key, okay? Now, over HTTPS only, okay, not HTTP, HTTPS only, because it has to be encrypted in secure connection. We provide the objects and we also provide the data key in a header. The exam doesn't ask about which header it is, just so you know, the data key is in one of these headers. Now, we have put into S3 the object and the client provided data key. Okay, so now we transfer both things into Amazon S3. Amazon S3 does the encryption between the object and the client provided data key. The object is encrypted into the bucket, and then Amazon throws away the client provided data key. So in this example, you see the client themselves have provided the data key to encrypt the data. So in this case, Amazon just does the encryption, but throws away the key right away. Finally, there is client-side encryption. And for this, you need to use a library such as Amazon S3 Encryption Client just to make it a bit easier. And the idea is that now the clients must encrypt the data themselves before sending it to S3. The clients must decrypt the data themselves as well when they retrieve the data from S3, and the customer fully manages the key and encryption cycle. So now how does it look like? We have Amazon S3 on the right-hand side and the client on the left-hand side. And using the S3 encryption NDK, we will generate a client-side data key. Altogether with the object, we will encrypt that data client-side. That's why it's called client-side encryption. So after this, we get an encrypted object, and that object will be transferred over to the bucket. So you see the difference here is that now our clients are performing the encryption and also the decryption. Okay, so these are the four. Hopefully the diagrams just make a bit more sense. And finally, you may get questions about encryption in transit. So encryption in transit is that basically Amazon exposes HTTP endpoints for non-encrypted traffic and HTTPS endpoints where you have encryption in flight. That means that the data exchange between two servers is encrypted in flight. And so you're free to use the endpoint you want, but overall HTTPS is going to be the recommended method. And if you paid a bit of attention, if you use SSEC, you have to use HTTPS, okay? Because you also transfer the data key over the network. Encryption in flight also is called SSL TLS in the exam. Okay, so that's all for encryption server-side, client-side, and in transit. Now let's just go and do a quick hands-on to get an idea of how things work. So let's go ahead and first upload a file, and we are going to add a file, and that file is going to be my beach.jpg. Now I click on next, and next again, and as you can see in the properties, we have a big encryption right here. So here, two encryptions are provided through the UI. It is Amazon S3 master key, which is SSE S3, or AWS KMS master key, which is SSE KMS. Okay, the other two, SS3C is not available because I would need to provide my own data key. And then client-side SDK also is not provided because I would need to encrypt the data on my computer. So the only thing that makes sense for the UI is Amazon S3 master key or KMS master key, where Amazon figures and generates a key for me and then encrypts the data. So if I click on Amazon S3 master key, there is no more option because Amazon S3 manages the key for me. And if I choose AWS KMS master key, then I need to select a key. I can select the default one that is provided for me by KMS, or I could create my own using KMS. We haven't seen what KMS is in detail just yet, but we'll see this later on. For now, I'll just go ahead and use the Amazon S3 master key, so SSE S3, and click on next. And as you can see now in this review, we see that encryption is equals to yes. Now I'll go ahead and click on upload, and the beach is uploaded. So now what has changed? If we click on beach.jpg, we can see in the properties that the encryption is AES 256. Whereas if I click on my coffee.jpg, encryption is none. So the idea is that now I have encrypted my file. The other thing we can do is go to properties, and we can specify a default encryption to automatically encrypt objects when stored in Amazon S3. So the one thing we could do is click on this and say, okay, I want AES 256, so SSE S3 enabled by default, and then click on save. Now that means that anytime I upload an object, it will be encrypted automatically using SSE S3. So let's go and test that out. I will go and upload a coffee again. So I'll go ahead and upload coffee.jpg. Click on next again. And this time I say encryption none. Okay, so I don't specify any encryption. Click on next. It says encryption no. Click on upload. And now if I click on my coffee file, as we can see now, it still said encryption AES 256. So encryption was applied because we set encryption to be default in this bucket. So this is one way of doing it. There's another way of doing it for this, which is called bucket policies, and we'll see this in the next lecture. But for now, that's all about encryption. So remember how to encrypt a file and remember about the different mechanism of encryption. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next lecture.